Hello, Pablo and Tom. These are your carburetors, and I've got it on macro so that we can see fine details. So that some of the distance shots will be difficult or would be a little out of focus. And there's carburetor 3948, and there's 3949. I want to go over a few things before we get started. One of the critical things is when you're securing your fuel line to your fuel inlet, use two wrenches, one to stabilize the fuel inlet in the float bolt, and then one to turn, and then another wrench to turn up here. And that because if you don't do that, you have a possibility of ripping the fuel fitting out of float bolt cover. All the carburetors have been totally machined. We've got new custom butterflies, custom throttle shafts. All the machine work has been done. Everything has been made plumb and true where the factory didn't do it in the first place. We've used factory gaskets, which you can tell because they're red in color. The idle mixture screw port on the second barrel of each carburetor is a dummy. It's been blocked off. Do not mess with it. There's nothing to do right there. Just leave it alone. This is the only adjustment you'll need to make right here for the idle air mixture, and I'll show you that later. And then also your idle speed right here. Only other adjustments that you might be concerned about is just little teeny screws right down here. That little screw right there is a follower that helps close the second barrel. And what you want to do is make sure that those are not so tight that you don't get any clearance. Rather, little play here. I don't know if you can see that or not. Anyway, it's supposed to be about just a smidge of clearance so that there is no binding on this second barrel throttle shaft. And what happens if you screw this down too far against the second barrel shaft, what happens is you'll start actually jacking open the first barrel and increasing your idle artificially, and you'll never be able to get your idle down correctly. So just make sure that these should not need to be adjusted, but just make sure nothing happens there. Let's see, as I said, all factory gaskets. You can see the red gaskets down here, much more durable than the aftermarket gaskets. Make sure all your throttle shaft is in good condition. You've got like 7 of these ball sockets, and if each one of them had a 32nd of an inch slop in them, that adds up. So we've got new ball heads right here, and you just need to make sure you got new sockets and make sure your bushings are good inside here. Mounting the carburetors, you'll find that a set of quarter-inch drive wobble sockets really makes a big difference, especially if you use the original 14mm nuts and bolts. And what you'll want to do is bolt these up in a crisscross. Assemble your carburetors. Put your air log in place, the big aluminum air log, the air collector. Put that in place on the carburetors. Adjust the carburetors up and down where you can get the air log in place, and then only then would you start tightening these bolts, and then you can pull your air log off, do final tightening, and then that means that later on when you go to install your air log, it'll just slip in place. And nothing worse than mounting these carburetors and then finding out the air log won't fit, because there is a lot of slop in these things, in terms of up and down and sideways. Also, make sure you mount them with the choke mechanism to the center. You'd be surprised the number of people that make that mistake. And what else? Fuel filtration and clean fuel is incredibly important on these carburetors. The reason for that is your idle jet, the G55 idle jet. The car idles on the first barrel of each carburetor, and idles on this jet, and it's almost impossible to see under any circumstances. That hole right there is incredibly teeny in the center of that jet, and just takes a fleck a teeny little fleck of something to get in there to clog that up and destroy your idle. So anytime you can rev the engine up but it dies, it's because your G55 is clogged up on one of the other carburetors. And I recommend running an extra inline fuel filter between the original fuel filter switchover valve and the fuel pump. That'll make your life a lot easier. Now we got us a stone cold engine, no temperature here, and I want to make sure we go over the normal starting procedure. The car has been sitting for quite a while. Come in here and use the fuel pump priming lever to pump fuel into the to make sure the float bowls are full of fuel. Now I've been letting these carburetors sit for about a week and checking for drips and leakage, and there are none. And this is a tough job to get. Just tough. It's difficult to keep these things from leaking. So I'm very proud of the fact that these do not seep on the bottom. So once we've got the carburetor body, the float bowls full of fuel, next we're going to give it a couple of shots like that. Operate the choke. Oh, I forgot to put the connect my battery. And we're going to operate the choke, which is, and you notice how nicely the chokes work on these. It's one of the hardest things to get right on these engines, on these carburetors, is get these chokes to work. Hope I haven't flooded it. There we go. Oh, got no battery. What's going on here? Oh. Alright, battery cables were off. Okay. Contact. Ambient temperature is about 60, 65 out, so that's not too bad for a cold engine. Now notice as I operate the choke that I'm actually moving the accelerator, the throttle, because the choke, in addition to closing off the air supply, you're physically actually opening up the car as if you've got your foot on the pedal. So what you want to do is when you first start up and you pull your choke on and you start driving off, you can start backing off on the choke as need be, as the car engine slowly warms up. Now we need to warm up the engine so I can show you how to tune it, because you cannot tune these engines, the carburetors, without getting them warmed up. So I'm going to do that with the throttle as if I'm just driving along. We're waiting for the water temperature to come up. Filming is hard to do with just two hands. And this is why we test carburetors. That's fuel fitting right there. that fuel fitting is starting to seep a little bit, so I've got to figure out what's going on there. So that's why I test these things. Thermostat just opened. Now we'll go through the tuning process. Let's see if I can tighten up this fuel fitting first of all. Oh, okay, there we go. Okay. Your basic settings are going to be: screw this in, screw your idle mixture screw in. If you ever have to do this from scratch for any odd reason, your basic settings is to screw this in until it just barely touches and screw it out 1.5 turns. That's your idle mixture screw, and then you will just set your initial idle. When you screw this in until you make first contact with your lever, your throttle lever, and then screw it in 1.5 turns. You do not need to screw in the idle mixture screw super tight and then back it off. You just need to go in and barely touch it and then come back out. In fact, you can do it with your fingers, if you can get your fingers in there. What we're going to do, well, first thing we're going to do is you want to separate the carburetors so that you're not trying to adjust carburetors that are, like one carburetor is affecting the other carburetor. So what you're going to do is you're going to remove the throttle linkage. So we got independent carburetors, and then you're going to get your synchrometer out. Got to have your synchrometer, get these online, and we're going to start checking for airflow. We don't want much airflow going through the second barrel. Alright, barely registers there. Didn't register there at all. So now we're going to check for synchronization of our first barrel of each carburetor. So right there we got 4, and right there we've got 3.5, almost 4. So we're going to, well, actually I guess it's 4. So we're going to make sure each of these are the same, which we've already done. But if for some reason they're not the same, just go in and screw down your idle screw, and you can see the airflow changing. Now we're gonna, now back there I got that up to about 5. So let's up to about 4.5, 5, and that's going to depend on where you want your idle. So we come over here. Sorry about the camera work. Come over here, and we'll raise this up to 5. Alright, perfect. Now the next thing you want to do is snap this throttle linkage in place so that nothing changes in terms of your idle. So we come back here. We're still at 5. Still at 5. That's what we want. Now you're going to work, and well, let's see, while we're still on idle, let me show you how we're running here with the tachometer I've hooked up is not that terribly accurate, so I'm using my electronic tachometer, and we've got on the, okay, so right now we're idling at about 600 RPM. That'll give you an idea how good the carburetor machine work is. So why don't we go ahead and idle this up to a factory setting about 750. Now we're going to do that even without the synchrometer, because what we're going to do is we're going to screw each adjusting screw in the same amount. So let's go about 1/8 of a turn there, 1/8 of a turn there, Yeah, haven't gotten far enough. We're only about 650 RPM. Eighth of a turn there. Eighth of a turn there. Alright, we're up to, there's a scale right here, we're up to about 7 and change. So now let's go back and check with our synchrometer how close we got. Alright, we ran up to 6. And up to 6. That's how accurate you can be just by doing your adjusting screws carefully. Now then, idle mixture screws. What you want to do is screw it in until the engine stumbles, screw it out to the engine stumbles, and get your midpoint. These are very sensitive because we've had these remachined, and the needles have been fitted to this particular carburetor. Starting to drop off. That's how dramatic it is. So starting to drop off. Starting to run rough. Back it up. Oh, that sounds pretty good there. Same thing over here. Starting to run rough. Starting to drop off. Get our midpoint approximately. Let's put this on the high side. Now then, that will have changed our idle because we changed all of our settings. So we are currently idling at about 800. It's still fine. Let's see how much it changed here. We were at 6, now we're at 6 1/4 and 6 and a smidge right there. Anyway, that's all within the norms in terms of the idle speed. Now we go back to our idle. Check our idle speed here. That is right around 800. So now we can, if you want to lower the idle, do it 1/8 of a turn at a time. And there we go, starting to settle back down. And we're back to about 750 on the idle. Alright, so we stopped off the grocery store for a second, come back out. Check hot start. Heck, my battery is... Heck. Oh, lost the lead on my starter here, my jet bump starter. Alright, now switch on. And I got one more thing to do. That fuel fitting is still leaking, so that's why we test the carburetors. I'm going to change that fuel fitting, double check for leakage, and get these all buttoned up for you. But these are a really, really nice set of carburetors. So thank you very much.